Well, I think we'll get started here, folks. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Lori Prince. I serve as the Director of Parent and Family Engagement on campus. So actually, my office is here for you as the family and supporters of our incoming students, or all of our students, frankly. I'm also the proud parent of a Redhawk alum, so I've been down this path before and have had all those feelings that you have as you're launching one of your students to Seattle University. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Randy Scott. I am the Associate Director of Counseling and Psychological Services. We call it CAPS here on campus. And I am, first of all, an alum of SU. I actually did my master's here and worked here for close to 10 years now. And I am actually one of you right now because I have a son who's going to be in school as an incoming first-year student this fall. So I'll hopefully be able to talk to you about some of the things that we've talked about as well that are on our minds.
Great. I wanted to let you know as we begin, and we're going to record this, so it'll be available with the orientation YouTube site after a bit. So don't worry if you don't get it all taken down. You'll have access to it again, and the slides are actually currently on the orientation website under the information for families and supporters. We'll have a little time at the end if you'd like to pose some questions to us. So if you would use the Q&A option to do that, we will try to get to them after we're done our presentation. So we know that there's a lot on your mind as you are in this process as well, thinking about maybe some of the things that we think we know families think about are this in terms of, will your student, of course, do well in classes, stay healthy, be homesick? Yes, frankly, they probably will. It's pretty common. Safety and all of these things about this big transition for them. This is no small thing. This is probably one of the most or the largest transition they have at this point in their life for most students, is going off to college. And it's also a changing time for you as the families and supporters of your student. Typically in these first couple of years of our kids' lives, till they're 18 or so, we've been really doing the managing. You've been a manager and a caretaker, probably making lots of appointments for them, talking to their teachers, really scheduling their time. In college, you are typically not there. Even if your student is going to be living at home and commuting, your connection to their day-to-day college life is going to be quite different than it was in elementary, junior high, or high school. And for your student to be successful, really, they need to kind of start to be that driver of their experience here. So I'd like you to start to think of yourself as more of a coach and a mentor for your student, as opposed to a manager. Really kind of starting to pull yourself more to the sidelines and give them that lead. College is a different thing than high school, right? And it's certainly even different than when Randy and I were in school. But your student's primary job is their education and adapting to this new environment where they're probably more independent in their living. They are really finding themselves and coming into their own during this time period. There's a lot happening for them developmentally during this time. And we want students to feel welcome and supported here, but we are not surrogate homes. We also want them to experience growth and challenge. And they will have that, whether it's intellectually, emotionally, socially. It is not uncommon for there to be struggle and transition, right? That is kind of part of the deal. When you're in transition, there are challenges. And as much as we try to, as parents, we can't protect them from all failures and disappointments. And actually, really, for them to maybe have some of those challenges, it helps them develop some grit and resilience, which are really, really important, not just for student success, but for really success in life, to be able to get through that. High school, their time has probably been very structured, right? In college, they are only in class about 15 hours a week. More is expected of them outside of class in terms of some of their study time. So that's not a lot of time in a week that's going to be scheduled out for them. And time management really is one of the largest challenges that college students face because they have so much time that they have to figure out on their own. Our professors are perhaps not going to take role, right? And we are a small school, so their professors will know if they are in class or not, whether or not they've taken some sort of role. We are on a quarter system here, 3 10-week quarters versus kind of 2 15-week semesters. The pacing is quite quick, so they really need to stay on top of their work. As I said, they're only in class about 15 or 18 hours a week, and so they are spending a lot of their time studying, writing papers, doing research outside of that class time. They are probably going to be with lots and lots of new people, right? Most of our students come to Seattle University not knowing somebody from high school, or they might have 1 or 2 people that they went to high school with, but really most of them are meeting new people. One of the things that's different for just in terms of their books, they have to purchase or rent textbooks at college. They do that for every quarter as they change classes. They're not provided to them. And if they're living on campus, right, they're sharing a room with someone they haven't met before for the most part. Even if they met them on Instagram or however students are communicating via social media, it's not the same as living with somebody. And sometimes you've heard, oh, gosh, college are the best 4 years of your life. I'd like you to think about not putting that amount of pressure on students, right? If we set the bar that high, that this is the best 4 years of your life, and it has some challenges, then they think, what's wrong with me? Why is it not feeling like the best 4 years of my life? And I would like to say that if the best 4 years of my life ended in my early 20s, that would be pretty depressing for me, right? I think we all want to think the best is yet to come for us. So that's a myth that maybe we can help just debunk and not set that expectation that high.
So y'all remember when your student was in that tweens area where they weren't quite teenagers yet, but they weren't quite kids anymore? Well, you're going to get to do that all over again. So let's talk a little bit about where your student is right now as they're getting ready to go into college. They're in a very distinct developmental stage that we now refer to as emerging adulthood. And it typically happens between the ages of 18 and 25. Now, these emerging adults, they don't see themselves as adolescents anymore. However, most don't see themselves as adults either because they have yet to, take on those adult roles and responsibilities. The best way I can describe it is I recently had my son say, Dad, I'm 18. I should be able to go out of town with my friends. By the way, can I borrow some money? Right. So that's kind of that perfect example of where most students are right now as they're getting ready to go to college. So let's talk a little bit about those adult roles and responsibilities that they're going to be moving into as a college student. First of all, accepting responsibility for the consequences of one's actions. This is especially going to show up with, like Lori said about maybe going to class, right? Because they're not going to have anybody to write them a note to the office saying, please excuse my student from the first, class this morning. Students have to take care of this all themselves. They're also going to be identifying their personal beliefs and values. Now, spoiler alert, sometimes they are not going to align with yours, especially as they start getting exposed to new ideas, right? We're going to talk a little bit more about how to work with that. They're also going to be making some independent decisions. The best example I have of this is when it comes to going to the dining hall, right? You might do a really good job of making sure they're eating a healthy meal every day, but they might go there and they might be eating chicken nuggets and French fries every day for 2 weeks, right? These are going to be their decisions they're going to be making, and it kind of ties back to the first point about consequences of one's actions. Establishing financial independence from parents. If you figure this one out, let me know, because I'm still trying to navigate that one myself. Establishing an equal relationship with parents. It's very much like what Lori said earlier, right? You've been a mentor or you've been, a parent, and it's kind of been very top down. And now you're moving into that mentorship or coach role a little bit. Well, eventually, this is kind of what we're training our kids to do, right? Eventually, we want them to be on the same level of us, or sometimes even doing better than us, right? And so this is going to be a difficult time for them and for you.
Having a little trouble with the slide here, sorry.
No problem.
There you go.
Okay, so Lori also mentioned that your students going to be going through a lot of developmental changes. So some of those that you can look forward to, identity exploration, right? They're not only going to be trying to figure out what they believe, but why they believe it, right? And this could be something where a time when they're starting to become stronger in the beliefs that they were raised with, right? And then they start to take on the fact that they believe it because they believe it, not because parents or caregivers told them to. And like I said earlier, they're going to be questioning their worldview. And this is going to happen a lot. And Lori's going to talk about this more about when students come home for holidays. But I'll tell you, that's the number one time this is going to come up, right? When they come home for Thanksgiving, you're all sitting there and they're going to start talking about things that might not align with ways that you look at the world or maybe that you try to raise them. Love and relationships for a lot of students, they're either leaving maybe somebody they dated to go to college, or maybe they're going to start dating somebody for the first time and they're going to be trying to navigate what that looks like. As I mentioned earlier, education and work, they're going to learn how to balance that, right? They've got to make time for classes. They've got to make sure they're on time. Nobody's going to excuse them for classes. They're going to have to talk to professors, and they're going to mostly be navigating that possibly with a work study or maybe an off-campus job, or maybe, being involved in clubs as like an officer or something like that. That's going to take up time also. They got to learn how to balance those. And some of this is going to sound kind of scary, and I know that because it's been a little scary for me too as I'm getting ready to let my kid go off to college. But I will tell you, this is a time of great possibility, and you're going to get really excited about how your student is changing.
Okay, there's a bit of a rhythm to the academic year that I want to talk about in terms of what you may see. And Randy touched on some of these things a bit, right? When they get here, there's usually a lot of excitement and some anxiety, but they're going to be testing that newfound freedom of being on their own. Homesickness and loneliness is very common, even if they don't talk about it, because they think they're the only ones going through it, and they're certainly not. They're trying to make friends and figure out if they fit in here, kind of that old relationship piece that Randy mentioned. This is not unusual for breakups to happen during that time. When they get sick away from home for the first time, sometimes that's harder on us than it is on them, right? They call you sniffling or just feeling under the weather. And frankly, students living in close quarters in a residence hall, probably not sleeping as much as they should, or maybe they're eating too many of those chicken nuggets and not enough of a salad. It's not unusual for them to get sick. Time management, again, something that's challenging for them as they try to figure things out in terms of fitting all the different pieces of their schedule together. Balancing their money. If they're here, they have a food plan that's a declining balance plan, but they can't eat 3 meals a day and 2 or 3 snacks from the dining hall and make that money last the entire quarter. They're going to need to pay attention to that. There's different ways of socializing they're going to encounter. And all of our students who are coming in, they were admitted because they have done well in their high school environment. So maybe they're going to feel like, well, everybody has done well here. That's the thing, right? There's a new level of kind of expertise and success that's coming. So they might feel like a little fish in a bigger pond. Winter. I don't know how many of you are from Seattle, but winter gray days can be a little tough on folks sometimes, right? That cabin fever, and when it's kind of cold and gray and wet, although it does not pour down here. I'm not from here originally. And when I moved here, I thought, oh my gosh, is it going to be a downpour every time it rains? It certainly is not. Hopefully if they had a rough first quarter, and sometimes they do, it's not unusual for fall quarter grades to maybe not be what students expected because of the different level of work we have for them, that they come in with a new fresh start mentality about maybe changing some of their study habits or learning to do some things differently to do better in classes. After the holidays, they've spent at least a good 3 or so weeks back with family. Perhaps it's been holiday celebrations. They're eating, food that they knew at home, and they can come back, and kind of that wave of homesickness that can hit them again because they've kind of been with you for a chunk of time. We have the typical winter flu season. It's not unusual for students to maybe get the flu. It is not unusual for them to be still searching for a group of friends. Sometimes in the beginning of their time, they latch on to some folks right away, because they're looking to be with somebody to go to dinner with or whatever. And maybe or maybe not, those folks end up being people that they think they can really develop a solid friendship with. So they might still be looking for that. And students start to think about spring break. I think there's lots of myths too about spring breaks and colleges, college students. Not all of our students go off on wildly exotic spring vacations. Some do. Many go home. Many work over their spring break. Some do volunteer work kind of thing. But students will start to talk about that as the term progresses and we get to that point in mid-March. Spring. I say spring fever here because the first sunny day that it's maybe 60 degrees, everybody is out in Seattle in their shorts like it's an 85-degree day like it is today. It's not quite, but we get that hankering to be out there. The academic year feels long and they might start to feel a bit burned out, that they're, it's still going into mid-June. They will pick roommates in the spring for next year. It may be the person that they lived with this year, perhaps not, but they have to figure that out to try to make a good match for next year. There's maybe some stress about moving out. Everything has to come out of the residence halls at the end of the academic year, even if they were to go back to it next year. Because we have summer housing that happens for conference group or summer school, so they need to move everything out of their rooms. They're probably trying to find a summer job, and they might have been, they're excited to typically come home, but this is for a much longer stretch. And so there might be some apprehension about that and really staying home for maybe 3 or so months before they come back. And they hopefully have made some new connections, whether it's friends or love interest. And so there's some sadness over leaving some of those folks for a longer period of time.
So I want you to think for a second, when you hear the word counseling center, I want you to think about the number one thing that students come in to see us for. A lot of people, they think immediately about anxiety, depression, right? I'll tell you this, the number one reason why students come and see us at CAPS is because of loneliness, right? And I say that up front because, and we're going to talk a little bit more about normalizing certain things, but normalizing the fact, like Lori said, that this might not be the best 4 years of your life, right? And it might be a struggle at times. And sometimes it's okay to feel lonely. And I will tell you that most of the people, even the ones who are acting like they've got everything together, they're still lonely from time to time. So really telling your student that would be really helpful. Now, in those times when they're struggling more than typical struggles and they want to come to the counseling center, they really have 3 different ways they can access us: individual counseling, group counseling, and urgent care. So I'm going to talk about the different services we offer. Individual therapy, we offer that in person and telehealth. And yes, even people who live in the residence halls sometimes want to do telehealth right from the room because it's just too far to walk across campus, which is fine. We want to make sure that everybody can access services. The other thing I want everybody to know is that all of the services provided by the counseling center are free. Right? We don't want to make any kind of cost or use of insurance or not having insurance a hurdle for students. Now, the big thing to remember about individual therapy is it's only for enrolled students in Washington State. And I say that because a lot of students from out of state were hoping that maybe they can access services when they go back home to another state and maybe keep working with their counselor during the school year. Unfortunately, because all of our clinicians are licensed in the state of Washington, both the clinician and the client, your student, have to be within the state of Washington in order to receive services. All services are confidential, private, evidence-informed by professional licensed clinicians. Now, we offer 8 to 10 sessions per year, per academic year for students. And I will tell you the national average for college counseling centers is about 6 that they offer. So we're doing a lot more than that. And usually after 8 to 10 sessions, students either have resolved their problem or maybe they've developed new skills in order to address their problem. Or if it turns out that they need additional care, we're going to work with a student at that point to help them find a provider off campus as well. Everything is voluntary that we offer here. No student can be forced into counseling. Group therapy, pretty much all the same things apply. The biggest difference is that there is no session limit. There's many different groups that are going to be offered during the year, and students can attend every single group if they want to. And remember what I said earlier about loneliness kind of being the number one problem people come to see us for? Groups are a great way to find immediate community. So encourage your students to look for a group maybe that fits them. Now, if a student is experiencing some more intense psychological distress, we're talking overwhelming emotional stress and a crisis, they can come and see us at CAPS Monday through Friday, 11 till 1 for a 30-minute brief mental health assessment. It's an opportunity to sit down with a clinician for during that time, kind of problem solve, figure out, what is the immediate need here right now. Sometimes the immediate need is to set up regular counseling, which the counselor will do at that time. Sometimes it's for us to point the student in the right direction because they're so overwhelmed emotionally, they don't even know where to start. And so we'll work with them and say, okay, it sounds like we probably need to talk to disability services, right? And then we'll help point them in the right direction. Now, I will say that even though we have urgent care from 11 until 1, those are the hours that we have set aside for urgent care. If a student is in great distress and they come in to see us outside of that time period, we're going to make we're going to try to make sure we see them, okay? And it just might take a little bit longer. These are the times we have set aside for that. Okay, so this is a list that we put together here at CAPS that will, if you go over these things with your student, is really going to help your student not only succeed, quite frankly, it's going to make my job easier too. So let me tell you some of these things that we're looking for you to do. First of all, if your student you already know is interested in long-term therapy, we're talking more than those 10 sessions that I said earlier, start reaching out to therapists in Seattle right now. Okay, because I will tell you, even if you find somebody that takes your insurance or somebody that you can is more affordable, like through a database like Open Path Collective, which usually offers sliding scale services, even if you find somebody like, they're more than likely going to have a wait list, right? There's just a great demand for mental health care right now. And so if you're thinking that your student's going to need more than 10 sessions, start looking now. And if you can't find anything, you can reach out to CAPS now before your student even starts, and we can help you find a clinician in the area to work with. So if your student has accommodations right now, like an IEP through their school, the most important thing for you to know is that those do not automatically follow them to college. Okay, they have to reestablish those accommodations now. So make sure you're reaching out to disability services now, because you're going to need to supply them with the same documentation you got when you got them accommodations when they were in high school. Okay, and disability services, they want you to reach out to them now. Okay, so don't feel like you're bugging them during the summer. Reach out now. Prescriptions, this is another tricky thing. So if your student is taking any kind of prescriptions for mental health, and you're from out of state especially, talk to your provider, because some medications cannot easily be shipped through the mail. Your student may actually have to transfer their prescription to a local pharmacy within the Seattle area. And there are a lot of pharmacies around campus. We do have a student health center. They do not have a pharmacy. They do have a psychiatric nurse on staff, as well as nurse practitioners who can all prescribe as well. But again, make sure you talk to your primary care physician or the psychiatrist that your student is working with. The other big thing is for you to learn about all the supports on campus. Poke around on the website as much as you can, because especially when a student is overwhelmed, they might need you to just say, hey, have you talked to your professor yet? Maybe go by office hours. Now, I like this example because I'm a first generation college student, the first person in my family to ever go to college. And when I first started and they told me office hours, I was like, oh, you mean like 9 to 5? I didn't know that office hours meant that those are the hours set aside by a professor where they want to answer questions. And I will tell you that the most depressing thing for a professor is if nobody shows up for office hours. Okay, so make sure you're encouraging your student to do things like that. Also important for you to learn about the other services that are offered on campus that can support your student, like learning assistance programs or the writing center. Take advantage of these things now. Tell your student to take advantage of them now. Don't wait until there's a problem, right? Okay, this is a big one. If you have insurance right now, Make sure your student has a copy of their insurance card and they know how to read it. Make sure they understand what's the difference between a member number, a group number, and all that good stuff, right? Because the time to, you don't want to be trying to figure that out when you actually need the services. And remember, what's covered might be different if you're out of state. So again, check with your insurance if you already have it. I mentioned earlier, if they might possibly be seeing a therapist. Well, two things. Number one, ask the therapist they're working with currently to help them develop a plan for transitioning to college, right? Because it is a transition and their current therapist can help with that. But also make sure if your student wants to continue working with their therapist back home, if it's out of state, that their provider can do that. Because remember what I said, they have to be licensed within the state of Washington in order to continue services.
We talked about kind of that myth of college is the best 4 years of your life. These are some other ones we'd love your help in helping to debunk, right? So people think, well, everyone is so excited and thrilled about starting college, right? Well, hopefully, but perhaps they are feeling parental pressure or they don't know what else to do. So they're coming and they might not just be totally excited to do this. The myth that everybody adjusts easily, right? We talked about students feeling homesick and not sharing that with anybody or feeling lonely. They all have challenges adjusting, whether they say it out loud or not. That you're going to find friends right away when you get here. Again, relationships take time, right? Time and shared experience. So it does not happen overnight. And they're thinking of these relationships and friendships they've had maybe for the last 12 or so years with folks, right? They've built up this long-term thing and they're just starting here without knowing lots of folks. They don't think other people are getting homesick, even if they are, but we know that is not true. Randy certainly knows that. And, kind of the everybody parties in college, so I have to, or I'll feel like an outcast. Definitely not. There are students that make that choice, and there are many, many students that do not make that choice. So that is fine to not feel like you have to party. And, we ask students to decide on a major when they're probably 17 years old in the fall of their senior year of high school. And if they don't, they think their career is in jeopardy. I know I changed my major a few times, and the reality is most students do. So it's okay if they don't have a major picked out yet, or when they came in. They will find their path. We have a very solid core curriculum that helps them try out different things. They have academic advisors that can help them with that. It's okay if they don't make that decision as they enter. Again, we mentioned this is a transition for you too. So we want to be sensitive to that and know that you're going through some things. You're transitioning to that change in your level of parental responsibility, right? As Randy talked about, more of an equal relationship with students, with your student now that they're an emerging adult. And, you're figuring out what that means for you and that particular identity. There's a new family dynamic, whether this is your youngest, oldest, only child, middle child going off, their departure for college, again, even if they're living at home and commuting, is going to change the dynamic in your family. I will tell you, besides the humans in your house, if you have pets, they have a hard time adjusting to this too. I thought our dog moped around for quite a while when our son went off to school, which I thought, I'm the one who's feeding you and taking you out to walk, and you're just missing him. But okay, it impacts all members of your household, right? And you may have your own emotions related to your students' emerging independence, whatever those might be. You've got to figure out how to deal with that. You don't have as much action and knowing lots of aspects of their lives as they're leaving. There's some sort of a void that might be happening for you, right? Anywhere you're switching again to that guiding rather than controlling or managing. And there'll be ups and downs for you too. So that transition is a process, not an event. I like to say it does not happen one time. Maybe your student came to summer orientation, maybe they didn't, maybe you did. That doesn't mean they've transitioned. They're in the process of transitioning still. And you'll want to stay connected to them. And again, moving from that caretaking to coaching role is critical. You can help, right? Randy mentioned, check out our website, learn about the university, help your student feel confident in their own abilities to manage these things, to seek some of that out. They're going to need you sometimes to help guide them. There's still time this summer to help them develop some of those skills, even role playing with them, pretend you're the professor. And if they are trying to figure out, how do I ask a professor a question during those office hours, kind of do that role play thing. And really encouraging your student that the ball is in their court and they can take that responsibility for their education, right? This whole feeling of discomfort that none of us like, if you can normalize that some, that is just part of transition. It doesn't mean there's any deficit about them. It's just how it is when you're in a new environment. And lots of other folks are feeling it too. That learning about the university so that you can guide your student to make those contacts. Our website is full of information. My office, again, is here. Parent and Family Engagement is here as that resource for you. If you haven't found what you think is the right resource for your student, call me, email, and we'll talk about it, and you can share that information with your student, right? Campus involvement is a helpful thing for your student in terms of their connection to the university, not just their classes. So we have about 150 student clubs and organizations on campus. Getting involved in a couple of those and perhaps a job will really help them with their time management, frankly, and to feel more connected to the university. Again, having you be in a listening mode and not a fixing mode is a critical thing. They want to talk to someone about some of this stuff. So that's helpful if you can be that listening sounding board for them. Let them make some of those mistakes. Hopefully they'll be learning important lessons. These are hopefully usually in college, not earth-shattering mistakes that they make, but it'll help them build some confidence and resiliency. Reach out, but don't panic if you don't get a response immediately. I always say this, students, right? We have such access to them with technology now, but if you text them while they're in class, we're hoping that they do not respond to you immediately with that text or a call, that they are on a different time schedule in college. They're up much later, either studying or hanging out. So you might not get a response right away. Now, I will also say, you do know your student better than we do. So if you are concerned because maybe you haven't heard from them, or when you do, it's challenging, reach out to us. We will try to help you find resources for your student. That's kind of what I would say. Understand what I call messing the nest, right? And you may be experiencing this already this summer. Sometimes in the summer before students go to college, there develops a bit of a tension, perhaps. You may want them to be doing certain things before they leave. They have other ideas of what they want to do, and maybe things are not meshing exactly. What some of this is happening behind the scenes is, if there's a little tension in your house, it makes it easier for them to leave, right? It's kind of, they're like, well, I'm ready to go. And perhaps you're thinking, I'm ready for you to go at this point, because we're back in some of that, what I call, that early adolescence challenge, as they're coming into their own then. And you ask them one day, how's it going? And they tell you a bunch of stuff, when they're like 12, 13. Then the next day you ask the same thing, how's it going? And they say, why do you keep asking me all these questions? It's just kind of another developmental stage. And be ready for what I call the dump call or text as well, right? You may reach them in that text or phone call, and maybe they just came out of a class where they didn't do as well on an exam, or had a disagreement with a roommate, and you get the, I hate it here, I don't like my faculty, I don't have any friends, there's nothing to do, whatever. They give that to you because you are that safe, loving space for them to share that anxiety and those concerns, right? You feel like, oh my gosh, what is happening with my student? They've shared that with you, and if it's a phone call, they hang up, or end the text. They have been unburdened now that they've shared all that with you. And 9 times out of 10, they are going off and grabbing a pizza with their friends, or going over to the rec center to work out. Because you are that safe space where they can share some of their challenges and their anxiety. And again, you know your student better than we do. So if you feel like you're getting lots of that, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd like you to also think about having what I call 10 5-minute conversations over the course of the next few weeks before your student comes, if you have not had some of these talks already. And this is not a sit down and go through the list for an hour, right? They literally are hopefully more casual conversations. Maybe you're walking the dog, maybe you're prepping dinner, maybe doing the dishes, maybe you're driving in the car so you don't even have to look at each other, whatever works for your family dynamic. But I've got 10 topics here and they're listed in alphabetical order, not order of importance. I think you can choose which ones are most important to you, but these are some categories about, academics. What are they hoping to accomplish through that college experience? Alcohol and drugs, your expectations, values. Again, not every student chooses to indulge in alcohol or drugs. What might your student do when they're confronted with some of those choices and peer pressure? They might experience some of that. What are your expectations about money? Are they going to be having a job? Will they be required to help pay for some things, whether it's their day-to-day living expenses or contributing to part of their tuition, room, and board? Communication, how often do you want to be communicating with your student? How do you expect that to happen, given their changing schedule and your schedules? Really helping to encourage some smart wellness habits. We talked about kind of what are they choosing for diet things, but sleep. College students need lots of sleep, and managing some of that and exercise and good dietary choices are things that'll be habit forming for them and really help support their time here. Again, I talked about encouraging some on-campus involvement, again, clubs or a job or something like that. With the 150 clubs, we don't want them signing up for 10, 15 clubs, maybe 2 or 3 that maybe are things that they've done in the past, or maybe something new that they want to try out. It doesn't have to be what they've been. Maybe they even want to start their own club on campus. It's a very easy process if we don't have something that interests them in that way. Sex and relationships, again, the values you've shared with them, their expectations around that and yours. We are in the middle of downtown Seattle, so kind of street smarts and city savvy is important. We love our location. It's a great dynamic place to be. It offers the students more than just the university campus environment as part of their college experience, but it's really important that they be aware of their surroundings, that they don't walk around with their earbuds in, texting on their phone with a hoodie up and not paying attention to things around them. We have a safe campus, but we are in the middle of the city. Again, studying, that college is different. They might need to learn whole new methods of studying and taking advantage of those resources. Randy mentioned the Learning Assistance Center and the Writing Center. The best students in college take advantage of all of those resources. And right away, they don't wait until there's a struggle. I think the high school mindset is I only use those things if I'm not doing well. Our feeling and what we know works well for students is I'm a good student and I'm going to struggle sometimes, but I'm going to take advantage of all the resources we have to really work on my academic success. So nobody thinks any less of students when they go to use those resources. They actually think they're smarter for getting in there and using them early. Again, work. Will your student have a job? Many of our students work, whether it's an on-campus job, whether it's work study or non-work study. If they have a work study allotment as part of their student financial aid, if that's money they earn as they go with an on-campus job, it will say that they can work up to 20 hours a week when classes are in session. Frankly, I worked with first-year students for 23 years before starting this parent office. 20 hours is a lot for an incoming first-year student. 10 to 12 to 10 to 15, I would say max to start out, so that, again, that they prioritize their academics and getting settled in their situation on campus. Again, technology. We can be in touch every second of the day in a variety of ways. Should you? I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm asking you to think about some of these things as you use technology, right? It's a challenge of you wanting to stay close, but also giving them the space to come into their own and to mature. Ask yourself, who's initiating the contact and how often? Is it your student or is it you? who's driving that desire for that connection. I say Facebook because I know we Facebook, but your students probably don't. But if you are friends with them, should you be? Again, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I ask you to think about that. Do you follow them on Instagram or X or TikTok? Should you? And I will tell you, every student would love to get a little care package or real snail mail from home. So write those handwritten notes, send a care package. They love them. They just have to remember to check their on-campus mailbox. If they live on campus, they will each have an on-campus mailbox. But whether you send cookies or a clipping from the local newspaper or a picture of the family or the dog or whatever, they love getting that stuff. Even if they never write back a real snail mail letter, they love getting it.
So I mentioned get involved with digging around on the website to learn about all the different resources that are offered. Lori put together a nice cheat sheet here for you to start checking out some of them. I will tell you, parent and family engagement, Lori, is the office of that. And I will tell you, I've worked at SU for a long time. I've worked in higher ed for a long time. And now that I have a student actually coming to college, there's so much I don't know. All right. I've already bugged Lori with a million questions. So if you don't know, you're not alone. Ask, right? Lots of great resources on campus for your students. Student Health Center, like I mentioned earlier, they do have a full staff who can take care of all kinds of medical issues, counseling and psychological services. And the one I want to really underscore here on this list is timely care. And you'll be hearing more about this one as well. But what it is it's our after hours service for counseling and emotional support for students. So unfortunately, I'm sure you've had that experience where 3 o'clock in the morning, you start ruminating, your anxiety starts to spike, and you just need to talk to somebody. Timely care is a great option for that. With that said, there's so many other places for your student to get involved. The Mosaic Center, the Center for Student Involvement, campus ministry, all wonderful offices to help get your student plugged in.
Thanks for the plug for my office, Randy. I am the office. It's a one-person office, but as I said earlier, we are here for you. I am here for you in terms of your questions, and because we know your support for your student is critical to their success. So you will get newsletters from me. You've already hopefully received a couple of monthly just emails from me as you're in this transition process. Sometimes there are other university notices and updates that we will send to family members. It is not as much as you got in high school. It will be a lot less than that, but there are times. My office will sponsor some webinars like this to help you learn about other campus resources, right? My website address is there. We do have a Facebook group for families. If you are a Facebooker, we welcome you to join that group. There's this dedicated email address and phone number. Again, it'll be on lots of things you get from me, so you don't have to write it down now. And my office does sponsor Family Weekend within our homecoming weekend, and you can see the dates there. You'll get more information about it in September if you'd like to come. It's a time, if you choose to come back, where you can see students a little more settled in, maybe meet some of their friends and have some fun with doing some campus activities together. But whatever your question is, do not hesitate, please, to reach out. Make me work. That's why I have this job. So there's no question that's silly or too small. Again, remember, your student right now has one foot in each world, and you do too. So patience all around helps all of us. Your student's relationship with you will hopefully improve. I kind of jokingly have said at some of these sessions that we've done that, all of a sudden, I and my son's dad became smart again, right? Things that we have said to them over the years, he was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense now. You were right about that. As they come into their own and they see some of the wisdom that you've shared. You are still so important to them. Whether they tell you that or not, we know, because they tell us sometimes, and we hope they're telling you the same things. And celebrate for yourself. You've prepared them for this big journey, and so we thank you for that. And we look forward to spending this time with your student as they're here. There's been a lot of orientation and will continue to be. If you have questions for orientation, these are the folks who are organizing all of this transition stuff for you and your student. These are the folks you can reach out to in addition to me if you have questions. So At this point, I know I see a question in the chat. If you have some questions that you'd like to pose to us, we have a few more minutes. If you'd like to stick them, I mean, in the Q&A, please do so, and we will try to answer them. I'm going to answer one I see here live about how do students apply for campus jobs. So we have this system on campus called Handshake, and they can find the link to Handshake on our career engagement office page. And that's where people list their jobs on campus. And there are even some off-campus employers that have some things there. That's where they would submit a resume. If they don't have a resume now, even if they don't have a lot of experience, if they have volunteer experience or experience in their community or high school club experience, those are things they can put on a resume. And they can apply for jobs there. Now, as we get closer to the start of the academic year, there'll be more and more jobs posted there. So if they go and look on there now, and they don't see a whole ton of stuff that they're interested in, tell them to keep checking back, because we're in summer mode a bit here too. And so not everybody has posted their jobs for the academic year. Are there other questions that folks have? Stop that. And Randy's just going to be you and me for now. Great. Thanks for the thanks. Okay. But we thank you for your time. Again, we've recorded this, and so it'll be up on the orientation webpage or link to it soon. I've got to get it over to my colleague in orientation. We hope to see you on campus. If you're coming with your student on move-in day, the main move-in day, September 21st, we'll have a family hospitality area open and a resource fair. We'll have more information out to you about that. But don't hesitate to reach out to us as you have questions. Thanks. We're excited to see you and your student very soon on campus. Take care and have a good night.